Hi everyone, it's Plastic EP from Melbourne, Australia, and I've got a special Beatles author. He's put it all together. His dad took so many photos of the Beatles from 1963 to 1995, and I just give you the warmest welcome, Tony, to the show.
Hello there. How you doing? And greetings from London, where it's kind of sunny here, which is a rare occasion. So we're having our summer in the next 3 hours.
Now, Tony, I got to ask you, can you show everyone the book? It's called With a Little Help from My Lens, which is a fantastic title. Considering your dad took, how many photos did he take in total that are in the book?
So this is the book, and I just need to explain the significance of this picture. This is a lenticular on the slipcase. That picture was taken on the 6th of September 1963 when my dad met the Beatles for the very, very, very first time. And he had 3 shots to take, which he describes in the book. And he describes them as like kids that was the Odeon Luton. They were just about to go on stage. All the kids were screaming outside, but they were just happy to play around and this, that, and the other. And he just said to them, look, we need to just look in the lens. I need you to do your ties up. Can you stop mucking about and just pay attention, for God's sake? You know, the first shot wasn't right because John's looking up there and Ringo's over there and kind of thing. The second shot is, come on, pay attention to me. Second shot, still not right. And he had one more shot left. And it was that particular shot that became that iconic picture. And there you go. It's fantastic. Black and white, but I've colorized it. I've stuck a Union Jack behind it. And in a nutshell, that particular image became quite an iconic. It's an iconic shot now. But he that's where his relationship started with the Beatles. And he was chaperoned by a guy called Mike Hennessy. And Mike Hennessy was a journalist working in Fleet Street. And wherever he went to write the story, Tom, my dad, went to take the pictures. And that particular relationship worked all the way up to 1995. So he wasn't there all the time. And I said to him about 15 years ago, I said, look, listen, just write the story about different conversations with different people, different times, etc., because during his career of 50 years, he actually wore out 10 passports traveling the world. And every time he went away, he did a phenomenal amount of work in India for Air India at the time that were trying to get promotional images for travel to India and getting on the jumbo jet, which had, just come out. And he came back to London. And every time he came back to London, he would always end up bumping into somebody from what became the Apple office in the mid-60s. He became great friends with Derek Taylor and Neil Aspinall. That relationship, he stayed there right the way up until the breakup of the Beatles. And then he went away. He did more travel. And then he came back again. And it was purely by chance that he bumped into Derek Taylor and his wife just off of Regent Street in London. And Derek Taylor said, listen, we need you back, Tom. We've got a project going on and we need somebody that was there and that knows all of the other photographers, because can't tell you much, but come and see us. So he went back, had a chat with Derek Taylor and Neil Aspinall, and then he then learned that he was the archivist for the anthology project. In essence, that kind of kept him there because this became what I would call a commercial business. And all of a sudden, there were collections of photographs to pull together. There was collections of video to pull together. And Neil Aspinall's idea that was originally it was going to be a 1-hour documentary. And everybody knows that anthology was never a 1-hour documentary. But the book takes us right the way up to 95, but it also takes us through his time with John and Yoko at Tittenhurst Park and his relationship with people like Harry Nilsson, Peter Skellern, and lots of other artists that were on the Apple label, James Taylor, Billy Preston, and quite a few others. Yeah. So this particular book is what it is. It's 2 kilos heavy. It's 10 by 10. It's a coffee table book. Yeah. And it's got over 300 of Tom's images in here. And I'll see if I can just flick through a few. There's Mal Evans with George Harrison. I'll just get that in the light. You've got McCartney on drums with Donovan on keyboard there, and Neil Aspinall in his office, James Taylor and Carole King. Some of these images, quite a few of these images, are not seen before. I think this was the Apple Christmas card one year. These were all the girls working in the Apple office before Alan Klein came along and said, "You've got too many staff. Your overheads are a little bit heavy." And if I go further back, this is something I'm really proud of. Yeah. So this is Jerry Marsden with his Rickenbacker. Yeah. And when I spoke about the actual book itself, what was important for me was I wanted a book designer that would not only understand what I was trying to achieve, but also at the same time, I needed somebody that was going to print this exactly the same way as if you were holding a real photograph. Yeah, I was out in the States at Beatles Fest a couple of months ago, April time. Met a guy called Vivek Tiwari, and Vivek Tiwari is a playwright, and he'll probably cane me for getting all his description wrong. Lovely guy, but he's brought out a book just purely on Brian Epstein, and he was telling me about all of his research and the fact that Brian Epstein is sometimes pilloried for kind of getting them the wrong deals or this, that, and the other. But, he came across as somebody that was doing his best with what he had at the time.
Yeah.
But as I was doing the research for the book, I actually went online and I was finding images like this. So that's my dad, Tom, on the steps next to George.
That's amazing. This is unbelievable. This is history right here.
I found some of these images. If you go on YouTube, you'll see Around the World with the Beatles. It's in black and white. My dad was there at the dress rehearsals. He took it all in colour.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, and when I talk about the print quality and everything else that went with it, it was important for me to make sure that every single image comes out as a crispy biscuit. Don't forget Miss Cilla Black from the Mersey Sound. Yeah, you've got his story about. I recall a crazy Sunday at the beginning of April 1964 at Marylebone Station in London that Mike and I spent sitting in a stationary railway carriage with John, Paul, George, Ringo and the actor Wilfrid Bramble. So that was when the Help film was being filmed as well, yeah? I think my favourite chapter is Trini Lopez. What amazes me about that picture is that the Beatles were the support act to Sylvie Vartan and Trini Lopez, yeah? And there he is, stuck in that's him on the floor, yeah? Now, some people say I'm a bit of a ringer for him, but that's him there.
You look like him.
Well, there you go.
Amazing. And, that's amazing.
And if I go right to the end of the book, so we go, one of the last chapters is about the time that he spent at Tittenhurst Park with John and Yoko.
And he took that photo with John pointing to the Mr. Kite, the poster that he used to write the song. That's amazing. That's an amazing world-class photo. I've seen that in books.
Yeah, you go.
Look at those great photos there.
But he's talking about his time with John and the fact that, people say John was quite a complex character. I'm trying to get that in focus. There you go. I think he had the most admiration for John and George because between them, they weren't frightened to speak their mind, and my dad was never obsessed with this, what I call stardom and what I would call celebrity, because it didn't exist. And what he was more interested in was the people as people, actually trying to get under the skin of kind of what makes the people tick, when to stand back, when to take the photo, try to be in the room without anybody noticing that you're there. So, don't stick a lens in somebody's face. And a lot of those images are what I call more fly on the wall stuff over time, to the point where a lot of people. I met Chris O'Dell a couple of times now. She's a lovely lady, and I love her book. She worked with Peter Asher in the office at Apple at Savile Row, and there were times when Tom would come in and he would effectively almost be unnoticeable because he would just walk in, sit themselves down. Derek Taylor would say, look, there's the drinks cabinet, help yourself. That was dangerous. And Chris O'Dell says there were photos that he took of her in particular with George Harrison, Derek Taylor, Mal Evans, and she didn't even know that he was there. To me, like I say, that's what a good photographer can do. So, yeah, this is Chris O'Dell's book. I've met Chris quite a few times now. She remembers my dad really, really well. She's very complimentary about him. But what I like about this book is these are just like stories thinking, wow, what, you got in a helicopter, you went to the Isle of Wight because Bob Dylan forgot his harmonica and you had to take it there. And you were going to go by train, but you got a free helicopter ride. It's unbelievable. And of course, all of those kind of stories, especially what's in my dad's book, together with what's in Chris's book, it just wouldn't happen today because there's a whole entourage behind all of these people that are superstars or whatever they are. But it just wouldn't happen, you know. I'm sure people forget their instruments. And even when we saw the Fab Four at the Philharmonic Hall in Liverpool last night, and it seems to me it's quite a common occurrence that airlines seem to lose instruments, outfits, and the whole shebang kind of thing, you know, but they don't forget them. They give them to the airlines. The stuff goes missing, you know. But like I say, that her book I loved, I really liked. And she's a lovely lady. She really is a lovely lady.
Your dad met the Beatles first in 1963. Now, to me, that's amazing. Yep. How he got a close bond with the Beatles.
He got the cut of their jib because John had a reputation for being quite aggressive. He talks about that in the book for the first time he met him. So he talks about saying, you know, I was quite reserved. I didn't go full on and this, that, and the other. And he met them quite a few times to the point where in '64, where they were going to the States for the first time, he met them at Heathrow Airport. And in those days, this is when you could walk onto the tarmac, and everybody's on the tarmac, and the Beatles are just walking up there to get on the. And he explains in the book that John and Cynthia Lennon said, "Oh, so glad you're here, Tom. It's going to be great having your company in the States." And my dad said, well, I'm ever so sorry to disappoint you, but I've got other plans. I'm not coming. And he could have gone, but he said no. And when you tell Beatles fans that he actually declined the invitation to go with the Beatles, saying, listen, chaps, I've got other plans. And he describes, you know, the disappointment in Lennon's face and all this kind of thing. I think at the end of the day, he wasn't a difficult person to get on with. He could be there or not be there. He was an easy chap to get on with. So that kind of relationship blossomed, I think, over time, especially when they came back from the States, from the Shea Stadium tour, and then went into this crazy world of Apple. And he reappeared once they were at, they weren't at Savile Row to start with, because he describes them in George Street, I believe, but they then moved to Savile Row. Derek Taylor, I think, is an immensely intelligent character, immensely intelligent guy. And he'd been doing that in the States with the Byrds and a few of the Beach Boys and a few other bands. Like I say, I had a great relationship with my dad and with Neil Aspinall. And I just think that, like I say, he wasn't a complicated character, my dad, to get on with. And quite a solitary character, if you like. So quite easy to like and quite easy to get on with. So that's how the relationship just continued.
I just want to say, Tony, right, that your dad, Tommy, right, is a pioneer. Now, look, to go that road and have all these great photos now in your possession, that It's not a money value thing. It's an archival thing, an historical thing that now you've put in a book that's going to be there forever. And I want everyone out there, there's only 1,000 copies. So, you know, there's Beatle fans out there that really will buy the book just to get a copy while they can. Is there any chance there may be a reprint?
No, not a sausage, not a sausage, not a hope in hell. And do you know why? It's not my day job, and I can't tell you the avenues and the cul-de-sacs. It took me three book designers. It was the third book designer, a lovely girl up in Edinburgh called Emily Benton. Even this thing about this lenticular, that was the only thing that I really stuck my foot down on it. And I said, look, That's going on every slipcase on the outside of the cover. And she said, well, why? I said, because it's that's the first time that you met the Beatles. So it means a lot to me personally, and whoever's going to read the book will get it. And of course, then she said, well, I'm not sure it'll work, blah, blah. Anyway, I went all the way to Belgium to a printer that she recommended, and the digital printer, they're called Albi de Coca. Wonderful, wonderful people. But I walked into this, it was like going into a spaceship. Everything has got this digital printing equipment and what have you. And they will do anything from bespoke wallpaper right the way through to this wonderful book.
Tony, I want to thank you for being on the show.